In this video, we shall be looking very briefly at what it is that scholars all agree upon and what is it that they disagree on and why. There's a general consensus among scholars when it comes to teachings that come from the Quran or Sunnah Mutawatir. These are sources that are considered qat'i thubut. They are certain, they give certainty based on their authority, their authenticity, and the credibility and reliability of their truthfulness. And once their meanings are explicitly clear, there generally occurs a consensus. So for example, the Muslims of various groups have a consensus that there is only one God, that they believe in the hereafter, they believe in life after death, the existence of paradise, the existence of hell. So in the areas to do with the articles of faith, there's general consensus because these fundamental teachings come from explicitly clear teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah, and those parts of the Sunnah that there is no doubt regarding their authenticity and the meanings. What Muslims also agree on are those fundamental acts of worship, like praying 5 times a day and fasting in Ramadan and the need to go for Hajj and giving zakat. These are fundamental teachings that also come from clear explicit statements in the Quran or Sunnah that are uncontested by scholars, and the meaning is explicitly clear. Similarly, we find those things that are clearly prohibited, the prohibition of the consumption of alcohol, of riba, which is sometimes interpreted as usury or interest, the prohibition of extramarital relations, the prohibition of injustice, of theft, of murder, and many of these vices. Similarly, the promotion of values such as the importance of being forgiving, the importance of being patient, the importance of purifying one's heart, of being a better person, of being helpful, of enjoining right and forbidding wrong to the best of one's abilities. Because these come from clear teachings of the Quran and undisputed hadith, they become part of what scholars agree on. The clear text-based maqasid or objectives and purposes of Sharia, of establishing justice, similarly of ensuring good and removing bad, of reducing to the best of our ability harm. These are all part of the maqasid of Sharia. The objectives also of being pro-family, of protecting the family, of protecting life, of protecting wealth. These are all part of those objectives of Sharia that come from clear statements in the Quran and in the Hadith that all back each other. So these are, there's a huge area of very fundamental issues on which scholars have agreed. These fundamental things are what rest at the core of what it means to be a Muslim and what identifies a person as being Muslim. When it comes to those issues upon which they differ, they would differ for a number of reasons, but some scholars have classified the main causes of differences of opinions into 3 main reasons. One, where there is silence in the text or some ambiguity in the text, and scholars are therefore forced to use other tools, other sources of jurisprudence to fill in the gap, to fill in the silence in the text. And so some would use Amal of Medina, others will use Istihsan, others would use Sadudariya, others would use Ahad Hadith. There are other sources that scholars would differ regarding their authority and credibility when it comes to silence in the text. Sometimes there isn't silence in the text, but there is an apparent contradiction between some of the texts. So the meaning of a particular text in a context may not go in line with the outcome of that in a particular context. Consequently, where there's apparent conflict between evidences or sources, the implication of a hadith vis-a-vis the implication of justice, which is based on the Quran, we would find scholars differing in how they resolve some of this apparently conflicting evidence. It's apparently conflicting because there is no real contradiction in the sources, and the job of the scholars is to resolve that apparent conflict, and they may differ in the way they go about that. And thirdly, scholars would differ because of their assessment of their situations, the different contexts in which they operated, the different priorities, the different overriding cultural context in which the scholars existed may result in differing rulings. Scholars would give one ruling in a place, would go to other places and change their rulings because the rulings have to change to consistently achieve the objectives of Sharia in different contexts, and the rules are there to achieve these objectives efficiently. They are not the goals in themselves. And so because contexts differ historically and in time and in place, the rulings of scholars would sometimes differ as a result of the context or their assessment of the situation, even if the scholars are all at the same time and place, but they differ in their assessment of the situation. Sometimes scholars differ because they specialize in various fields, and because somebody is a scholar doesn't mean he's a specialist in every subject. And so when there's a difference of opinion among scholars, it is useful for us to ask, what are the areas of specialization of the particular scholar? If the issue has to do with the authenticity of a hadith, then probably the opinion of a hadith scholar may be more credible. However, if it is to do with extracting a ruling from the hadith, then probably the opinion of a mufti or a mujtahid would be more credible. So we find in every field of human endeavor, there are natural differences that occur, even among experts. An expert in one area may be a layperson in another. There are very few circumstances where you have somebody who is an encyclopedic all-rounder, a jack of all trades and master of all. They're usually master of one or some. And so when we find differences of opinions among scholars, it is also worth finding out, is the issue to do with a specific area where there are specialists? If so, then probably the specialists in that area, while not infallible, would probably be closer to the truth than somebody who is less competent and less of an expert in that particular field.